Okay. So what I'm going to do now is invite the panel members just to do a 1 minute introduction, say who they are, and to say a little bit about the perspective that they're bringing to this conversation. Yeah, go on, Harriet.
Okay, so I think that you've hopefully already heard me today. I'm Harriet Barnes from QAA, and my role there is around the frameworks that universities use to assure standards and quality. And I'm particularly interested in learning and teaching and supporting students and bring to that a perspective of what goes on beyond the classroom, recognising the learning outside the strictly academic, and how, I suppose from QAA's perspective, how we mediate between what QAA has a remit for, but where the wider student experience is important and how we can encourage that as well.
Hi, I'm Ruth Barnsley from the University of Derby. I'm an undergraduate. I'm a part-time student on the Creative Expressive Therapies course. I'm currently in my 4th year of 5 at Derby Uni. So I'm kind of giving you the kind of current student perspective, and I've gone through the whole thinking that education is very strict based set answers to incorporating this whole idea of life-wide curriculum into my own life, so I can give you that kind of perspective.
Hi, I'm Sarah Campbell. I'm a PhD student at the University of Surrey, but I also teach at the Open University, so I'm kind of bridging a bit of a gap, and I teach at Surrey as well. I think the things that I'm thinking about currently, this may not be my perspective on any other day, but today it's about how do we get the students who aren't self-selected to get involved with programs like this, to be involved and learn these skills, and also how, which someone raised earlier, is how to make the kind of transformational learning accredited and valued without turning it into accreditation by the way we do informational learning. And and I'm very interested in self-authorship through sort of research, but also my own personal journey. So I think that's where I'm sitting at the moment.
Good afternoon, I'm Gavin McCabe. I head the employability consultancy at the University of Edinburgh. We're a relatively small unit that supports strategy and policy around employability and graduate attributes. But as part of that, we oversee the university's Edinburgh Award and work with other units like the Careers Service, the Institute of Academic Development, and so on. I suppose some of the things that have influenced my perspective and influence our award are the aspiration that it hits more than just the usual suspects. We have a collection of students who are very engaged, very switched on, but actually there's an awful lot of other students that really need to be engaging with this side of their university experience. We try to be as inclusive as possible, so not just targeting the activities we know exist at the moment, but try and develop an approach that will encompass future unknown activities. And I suppose ultimately we're trying to develop in our students an approach that they can come away from the award with an approach they can apply then to any future situation, whatever that might be. I suppose that's where we're coming from at the moment.
Hi, I'm Sharon Milner. I'm the Employability Development Manager based at the University of Ulster. I'm currently responsible for the Ulster Edge Award. Holy smoke, that went flying. At least it wasn't me. Thank you. My perspective, one of the things I also do is help academic colleagues embed employability or explore embedding employability opportunities within the curriculum. So there is this little bit of a juxtaposition about the Ulster Edge Award is entirely co-curricular or extracurricular activities versus embedding employability in the curriculum so students actually engage with activities. So it's looking at that kind of tension and also looking at how can we actually impact or measure the impact of, is the award actually working? Are students actually getting out of it what we try to get for them? So I suppose that's what I'm trying to talk about today, unless I throw myself off the stage at one stage as well.
Hello, my name is Navid. I am a recent York graduate, having also done the York Award there as well. And I suppose I'm particularly interested in, I've been lucky enough to be involved in a few different projects, all looking at kind of engagement and how you can actually get people involved with education outside of, as you were saying, outside of the usual suspects and outside of kind of, also outside of higher education, as in people who are going to higher education, people who are in the community. how can and what responsibility do higher education centres have for actually trying to engage with local communities and different parts of the local community, really? So I suppose if that's a perspective, that's my perspective.
What a wonderful set of perspectives. Okay, so, and we want this to be conversation. We don't want it, targeting a question at someone and putting them on the spot in a sense. Anybody in the panel can answer any question, okay? Just, grab the mic and give your 3 pennyworth. And if the audience has comments, to develop some response, then please do so. So, Jenny, you're going to start.
My question was actually all about the engagement aspect, and I know that one of you comes from a university which has chosen not to have an award, and I was going to ask whether or not there has been any response from students who feel they're missing out because they're in such a university, but perhaps widening it out to everyone else. Could you maybe talk about the uptake, what responsiveness there is from your institutions to the participation in the award?
I'll tell you what, then I'll go first, even though my university did obviously do an award, York Award. In terms of the uptake, I know that...
Navi, could you just hold the mic
in front? Closer,
yeah.
I know that there were very few people, certainly on my course, so I did archaeological science, there were very few people who actually did it. I think the biggest reason for that was just, if I'm honest, the general lethargy towards something like that. It was a case of, well, where is the benefit for me? I think one of the biggest difficulties you have with things like this is people have to see the benefit for themselves. If you say, oh, this is really good because X, Y, Z, people probably won't buy into it in the same way as if they say, actually, I think this would be really good because of X, Y, Z. And so I think it's an interesting question to be brought up as to how can you encourage people to start asking that question and then find the answer to that, really.
Within the Ulster Edge Award, we piloted it last year, so we only had 58 students that actually graduated with it, but we were targeting, there was about 40 students we were actually targeting, so we had another little group that actually, across various disciplines, that actually gained the award, which was a nice output of it. Currently, we have nearly 4,000 students registered on the award. Now, how many will actually get through it is another thing. And that's one of the things that we're actually looking at now, how are we going to ensure that they actually uptake the award. It's not over a year, it's over the whole length of their programme. The uptake when we piloted initially was very slow, because initially we had academics we had to convince. But one of the things that we do with the award now, which is actually starting to work and which we've seen a real big byproduct of, is we've encouraged academics to propose activities for pathways within the award. So there are activities that they're encouraging their students that are not impacting on their 360 points, but they're activities that they can see as being a benefit to their students. Different types of things, engagement in different types of software, going out and doing practical based activities which the students didn't really engage with before, but now because they're part of the Edge Award, they're actually engaging in them, and it's now impacting as a result of that. Another thing that's had an impact as well is because the Ulster Edge Award is now one of an employability indicator within our teaching and learning strategy, and because of that, now staff have to show how many students are starting to engage with the award, what are they doing to enhance this engagement, what type of activities are they proposing for part of the award as well. So it's those type of things that are encouraging engagement, and also we've a really good relationship now with the Students' Union, and there's quite a few activities now within the award are part of that. So that kind of encouragement, class engagement, class representation, being parts of different types of committees, societies and so forth has had a big impact, because they're out proposing the award as well. It's also helped, it's part of the HEAR, and that students are now starting to get that type of message as well. So they want to have something within this section 6.1.
Thank you, Shah. Can I just ask you to hold the mic quite close to your mouth, because it doesn't pick up very well.
Close enough?
That's fine.
Very good. I suppose I'd echo a couple of points that Sharon picked up, that for us, the engagement with the award has really benefited from linking with really engaged and switched on staff across the university. Our model of the award is one where we have multiple versions, and each version of the award is attached to a particular type of activity. But we often find that the staff members running the activity or associated with it are people who are really, really switched on, really engaged, really dedicated to their students. And that enthusiasm carries through. I think another thing that we, echoing again Sharon's point, we've found a benefit where the award has been attached to the university strategic plan. So there is a target that's attached to the university award. And to be honest, with that follows resource sometimes, and that and that does help. For us, I think it's difficult to judge exactly the levels of engagement across student body because it varies by activity. Our way, in a sense, our way of scaling up is increasing the range of activities that are recognised through the award, and that means setting up new versions. What we've found is that when a version has been set up, for the vast majority of them, probably about 75% of the students that are attached with that activity already would choose to then engage with the award. But it does vary, so we'll have some activities where the uptake is much lower. So for example, students that are committee members in the sports union, running essentially small businesses for a year, the take up there is probably about a third of all those that are possible. So we find it varies across the type of activity that students involved in.
Just picking up on Jenny's point again, though, do you think that students going to universities where there is no opportunity for gaining recognition for life-wide activity are at a disadvantage? And to some extent, the pressure for these sorts of things have to come from the student body itself.
Sorry, back to me again. To be honest, I'm not sure that they are at disadvantage because of the lack of recognition. I think they'd be a disadvantage if there's a lack of support. Because I think there was a reference earlier on. Certainly, I'm a firm believer that it doesn't matter whether or not they have, for us, whether or not they've got a certificate at the end of the day. It is what they can do as a result that really matters. And that it is that potentially puts them at a disadvantage. If they hadn't had support and structure and encouragement in this direction. So I suppose I'm picking up on the word there of recognition. I'm not sure whether the lacking of recognition disadvantages them coming in. It's the support element.
I think, was it Surrey you were referring to? I thought it might have been. I can't obviously speak in terms, I haven't heard any students that feel disadvantaged or discuss it. I think my experience as an undergraduate was most students were there to get a 2-1 in order to get a job. And they weren't particularly interested in anything to do with their own development, be that academically or otherwise, unless there was some sort of assessment and mark that would count towards their degree, which as an undergraduate I found really depressing. And certainly I still see the same now. And it is just really depressing. And it's just really depressing. I don't know what else to say about it. But I do know, at Surrey that there are a lot of formalised schemes like the volunteering scheme and the Global Graduate Award for Languages, which is something I'm part of. And I know that in those schemes there is a very high uptake. I know in the Graduate Languages Award, Global Graduate Award, there's over 1,000 students registered, and that does get accredited on their degree certificate. So there are and there are student awards, but they all seem to happen very much under the radar unless you happen to be linked into those sort of events. You're not even informed that there are these awards that you could put yourself forward to. So I think there's a massive issue, certainly in Surrey, around communication and communication between the sort of institutional systems and the student body. And I think there's a lot of people who are involved in committees and students' unions and membership organisations that aren't validated in any way and aren't recognised. And I don't know how much that bothers the students. And I think one issue is that regardless of how things are recognised, when students leave, if there's not some national scheme that is called the same thing, it's almost irrelevant when they then put it on their CV. And I've had a couple of students recently actually applying for placements with me, and they listed these awards, and I thought, well, I have no idea what they are, so it's kind of meaningless to me. So I guess there's something about naming and not just thinking about students in higher education, but how do we use some sort of accreditation award system to help them when they move on? So I personally think students should be recognised for the other things that they do across their life. But I don't know how much students are aware of that, and whether it's something actually with hindsight they think, actually, I learnt an awful lot and I wish that had been recognised in some way. And for me, it's actually more important that students learn how to self-reflect. And I personally think that's more important than accreditation and awards and things.
So I haven't got an award or anything, or undertaking any awards to do with that kind of thing. But I do like volunteering outside, and I've done like a personal development plan, because part of my course we have a module that's towards getting you to think about like your personal development plan. And for that module, you don't actually have to go out and do some things. It wants you to think about what volunteering opportunities might be useful, what would make you more employable, but they don't force you to go and do it. The module's just about looking at yourself and seeing how you could be more employable, what skills do you have, and what skills might you need. So I chose to follow on from that, and I don't think I'd really mind the fact that it's not an accredited thing, that I've gone on to do other things, because I know that it's more the experience that I'm getting from it. I know gives me the confidence to go on to apply for more jobs, and the confidence to know what I'm doing when I'm actually working, rather than like if I hadn't gone on to volunteer, I wouldn't really understand things the way that I do now. So for me, it's more the me knowing things rather than my employer knowing that because employers kind of expect, if you've got a degree, that you know your stuff. So I don't think it's really that important for it to be accredited. I think it's extremely useful for students to do it. I just don't think it's particularly important for it to be an accredited thing.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was just thinking as well, this kind of focus on employability, I think, almost is an extension of part of the issues I see in education generally, is this focus on academic and intellect and getting a career, and actually there's a whole range of skills that are useful for life beyond employability. Particularly, I research emotions, which is probably why I'm focused on that, you know, in terms of kind of emotional intelligence and all of that. And yes, it's got a place in terms of employability, but I think actually just in managing our lives and developing relationships in all areas, you know, and the benefit of that. And particularly, I think when people talk about employability, it excludes a whole range of people who aren't planning to go and be employed. They're planning to set up their own businesses. They're planning to be parents, that, you know, whatever it is. And I think for me, I'd like to move away from the sort of focus on employability and skills, and more seeing people holistically, as someone said earlier, more about what it means to be human and human experiences.
Are you going to move us away from?
No, I'm going to extend that a bit, if that's all right. Is that all right? Okay, and I'm just thinking about this, and so this was going to come out in a very half-baked, asinine way, but I think it connects a bit about the day and some of the things we've been talking about. And it occurred to me, two things occurred to me. They always occur to me at conferences. One is, this is a very broad church. There are lots of people here with slightly different perspectives, perhaps major perspectives, and I just want to flag up two thoughts, two strands that I think are in the church in a minute. And the other is, we are the converted, because we're in the church. So we've all got to go back and try and work with people tomorrow. And it seems to me that one of the themes, in a sense, is about this notion of employability and things called employability awards. And there are lots of skills lists that you can point to. And there are lots of schemes which, in a sense, are about recognition and perhaps about facilitation in terms of developing those skills. And there's another voice in this conversation which is about self-authorship, which is about finding your own voice And that seems to me to be partly a little bit about what Ruth just said about catalyst for thinking, and partly about challenge. Challenging the view you have of yourself and learning, what learning is, where learning takes place, all of that sort of stuff. And I'd be interested in any thoughts you have about the extent to which the schemes you know about or participated in are actually engaging with the agenda of challenge, as opposed to the agenda of facilitation, which seems to me to be kind of accepting the world as it is and the CBI skill list and saying we must all develop these kinds of skills. So I don't know where that fits. I'm not sure it's a question. It's a question. It's a kind of, I wrote it down and so I just had to say it. Really. It's a compulsion.
Well, for me, the module that I'd done working towards the future, that kind of challenged me because I thought a degree was enough to get me a job. So it challenged me to think about what skills did I have and what skills did I need. And to me, employability isn't just being employed by someone, it's your general, if I ran my own business, I would consider myself employed. If I was any form of a job in any form, to me is being employed somehow. So I see it all contained. So that's kind of the way I use employability, which might not be everyone's definition though. But yeah, that kind of sparked the catalyst to think about the fact of I need to take on the responsibility myself. The uni aren't going to force me to do it. I've got to do it myself. And that, along with another thing that had happened slightly beforehand, kind of sparked a change in the way I kind of focused and came towards my actual uni work myself, and I took a lot more ownership of it rather than expecting the tutors to give me all the information.
It's an interesting question. I was thinking the words I put on the slide earlier, which came from the Quality Code around developing academic, personal and professional potential. And quality assurance people spend a lot of time talking about words, and we talked about those words an awful lot before we came up with them. But I think one of the key things that we were taking from what the sector were telling us is about that it's not necessarily fulfilling potential, but it's about pushing the students on in all three of those dimensions, academic, personal and professional. And the balance between those might vary for different students. But that's the key thing that we think, sort of from a QAA point of view, we want to see that higher education providers are doing, that they are pushing the students on to develop those as appropriate to them. And that, again, depends on the type of, every student's different, just as every university is different, and how you do that will vary depending on individual students.
Just picking up this word, the question of challenge, because actually we found it very instrumental within our award. Some of the most useful conversations sit around that. It's certainly true that within the Edinburgh Award there is sometimes a focus on skills and abilities, but there is also explicitly a focus on the students' beliefs, attitudes and general approaches. And I think from our experience so far, and it's relatively short, it's only maybe 2.5 years, our experience so far is that that second set, in terms of the attitudes, the beliefs, the approaches, are the things that are most often impacted when there is a challenge. And what we've found is that while the staff member involved in that particular version of the award can be very helpful in creating some of that challenge, actually we get the students to do it for each other. And that's a constant thread for us throughout the award, because for us that sense of student community is very important, but also that that anybody around you should be able to challenge, question, encourage different viewpoints, different perspectives.
Just on that point of employability, because I'm fortunate enough to be in the gameful world of employment, and I work for a small IT company, and they aren't in the least bit concerned as to whether I've got a York Award or any other awards. They are concerned on a day-to-day basis of whether I can do my job and how well I can do my job. And I think this goes back to the key point of actually the award itself doesn't kind of give you a magic right to get a job. What it can do, though, is it can encourage you, I think, to go out and do other things, to go out and get those extra skills that when you do go to your job, then suddenly you are actually quite good at your job, and people then think, actually, yes, he's doing or she's doing whatever needs to be done. And I think that's the key. It's about, like you say, equipping them people with those skills rather than necessarily giving them an award and saying, oh, there you go, congratulations. Because I think possibly in the world of employment, people aren't too concerned about that.